issues with your image, you may want to.
I am on that, Jennifer. Give me a minute.
Okay, all right. I know connectivity is always hard. And Dr. Lintott, Chris, thanks for
Hey, nice to see you. How are you?
Good. How are you today?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Yeah. And hello, Rebekah.
Hello, hi.
Thank you all for being here. We are running a solid series of events today. So some folks are just coming in from another event. They're going to be going on to others afterwards. So we do a public sound check and check in. And I wanted to make sure that everybody had the sense of today's session as a conversation. This is really just a chance to dig in together. And I sent you all yesterday that overview of how we were going to open up this conversation. Let me know if you have any questions, and otherwise we're just going to move into this, as Liv likes to say, like a jazz quartet, which I love that analogy of everyone jumping in to share your ideas, your questions, your inspiration, and we'll have a couple of things to kick us off with. But I already see that there are 30-some people in attendance. Thank you everyone for joining us. We're doing this live prep session and sound check. So Liv, do you want to walk us each through?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. As I mentioned that, and everybody watching us live, as I mentioned that everybody can see us, but we can't see them. And what we'll do is I'll just go through to each of you to make sure your sound and video looks great. And then we'll start with a live intro from Jennifer. That'll be about 2 minutes. And go into a great video from Jim Green, and then it'll be a live conversation. And we're really so thrilled to have you part of this CitSciCon and CitSci virtual event. So there should be practitioners and also citizen scientists here. And thank you so much to Caroline and everyone behind the scenes. So here we go. So let's do some sound checks. So Rebekah, I see you first. Do you mind unmuting yourself and just saying hello?
Hello, hopefully you can hear me today.
Perfect. Wonderful. And if you're able to look into the camera while you're speaking, I find that it helps.
It's hard because everything is over here, but I know the camera's over there. Sorry.
Just pretend like you're speaking to the audience out there. And so
audience.
So please. And Dr. Lintott, do you mind unmuting and let's just hear.
Hello, this is Oxford calling. Hopefully you can hear me fine.
Coming in loud and clear, Oxford. Thank you.
Right.
You sound wonderful. And I'm also in Portland, Maine. I think it's wonderful to see where we all are. So, Sumit, would you mind unmuting and let's just do a quick sound check for you?
Hello, everyone. Greetings from India. Hi.
Hello, India. Wonderful. And I love your background. It's fantastic. So thank you so much.
That's my project.
It's so cool. It's so cool. All right. And Kristin, whenever you're ready, if you wouldn't mind unmuting.
Hello, can you hear me?
You sound and look great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I know Sarah Kern is here. Sarah, did you want to do a quick sound and mic check?
Sure. Hi. Can you hear me all right?
Hi, Sarah.
I'm going to help with the Q&A and feed some questions from the Q&A tool to the discussion at the end. That's what I'm here for.
That's perfect. And do you want to introduce yourself, Sarah, and say who you are in case everybody might already know you?
Well, I was just going to actually introduce her and say some of you might know Sarah as the leader of now an annual, a year-long plus series of webinars and learning experiences for the NASA leader community in citizen science. And she's based at the Gulf of Maine Research Institute. But Sarah, don't let me speak for you. I just didn't want to be remiss in introducing.
That covers it. And you can't mention that without mentioning that I'm working with a team of people, including yourself, Jennifer, and Liv, and Heather, who may be here, and Marc Kuchner on that. It's definitely not a solo enterprise. Nice to be here with you all. And Sumit, congratulations on graduate school.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hip hip hooray.
Yeah. Sarah, you're
Hip, hip,
actually going to
hooray.
hear, as will others, that we have this team of folks who are joining us from the two NASA Zooniverse projects are all in or entering into graduate school in related fields, which is just amazing. And so exciting to hear. And I hope each of you will share a little bit of your stories as well as we get into this.
Congratulations and good luck to you all. I'm going to go silent and muted.
Great. And Liv, I know the one additional person that we would love to do a sound check with if he's on, and he might just be in between sessions, is Marc Kuchner. Do you know if he's here with us yet?
He is not on yet.
Great. We will engage him when he joins. He is one of the people who has helped inspire this particular session, and not just this session, but this whole series of events, CitSciCon, and how all of us, particularly at the Citizen Science Association, have come to be part of this event as well as others. So we'll look forward to inviting him into this conversation. I know that we are running back to back in between all of these events today, and we have, according to my computer, just a minute to go here until we officially are live. So we want to give folks that minute to be sure they have full chance to join us. Welcome to all of you who are already here. Really looking forward to a conversation today with this amazing team of folks who are here to share their experiences with us with citizen science and NASA citizen science from the perspectives both of leading projects and participating to projects, each as critical collaborators in this endeavor. Any thoughts before we get started, Liv?
The only other thing is if you're able to be muted when you're not speaking, that's helpful. And then Caroline, I was wondering if you would start the live interpretation for us before we officially get started.
The live transcript.
The live transcripts. Yeah, sorry, live transcripts.
Great, thanks, Caroline.
Perfect. And I'm just going to adjust something. And then I know we're just waiting on Marc, but we can be ready to go whenever you want to, Jennifer.
Great, thanks so much, Liv, and welcome to everybody. I see so many folks chiming in the chat, and I know we'll have others joining us here as we go. So pleased to have everyone joining us from many places around the globe. Caroline, I'm seeing one chat here about audio issues. Maybe you can help out there. We are excited to give everyone the chance to tune in and make the most of this experience together, because this is a team of folks you're really going to want to hear from. Welcome again. My name is Jennifer Shirk. I am the director of the Citizen Science Association, and the CSA is an organization that connects people who design, lead, and research projects that engage the public in citizen science. And one of the things that we do as an organization is support and engage those project leaders and those project researchers in ways that helps to celebrate and uphold excellence in both research and engagement, because we know that citizen science depends on and excels at both when we all put our best energies into it. One of the ways that we do that as the Citizen Science Association is to convene these project leaders. Usually we do that in person. This year, of course, it's virtual, and you are attending, whether you know it or not, right now, one of the plenary events, the keynote events of CitSci Virtual, which is a month-long gathering of these leaders in citizen science who design and research and make these projects possible. One of the things about the Citizen Science Association and our convenings, though, is that we often don't have the chance that we would like to also convene some of the most critical collaborators that we could learn from in how to do these projects well. And those are the volunteers who devote their time, their energy, their insights, and their passions to making these projects possible. And those collaborators now number in the millions. So we have worked with NASA, with support from NASA and through partnerships, including with SciStarter, to create this 2-day series of events, CitSciCon, to help bridge those connections so that we can actually hear directly from volunteers what makes their participation possible and powerful. And today, because those numbers of volunteers now are in the millions, we're welcoming a guest presenter, Dr. Lintott, who is one of the people who designed a platform that has helped elevate that participation into those millions of numbers. And we look forward to hearing a conversation between him and 3 of the leading volunteers who have gotten very deeply involved in Zooniverse projects. And Zooniverse is the platform that Dr. Lintott helped to inspire and create. But before we get to that team of folks, I did want to reinforce that although you're going to be hearing from 3 volunteers who have gone very deep, both into their NASA citizen science participation and now into the fields that they have studied through citizen science, I want to reinforce that everyone can do NASA science. And who better to inspire us all in that than Jim Green, NASA's chief scientist. And I'm going to turn it over to Liv here to play a quick video from Jim Green.
Have you ever had an aha moment? That feeling when everything just seems to make sense. Scientists have them all the time. Hi, I'm Jim Green, NASA's chief scientist, and I have discovered many new things in my career. And let me tell you, there's nothing quite like that feeling when you discover something important that no one in the world knows. What if I told you that through NASA's citizen science program, you too can experience that same feeling? Are you interested? Citizen scientists working with NASA have made many significant discoveries, some of them right from their own home. For instance, 54,000 circumstellar disks have been found by citizen scientists. What are they? These are debris fields around stars in our galaxy where planets are being formed for the very first time. What about the citizen scientists that have discovered 18,000 mosquito breeding sites in NASA Earth Science images? Breeding sites like these are important to first find since mosquitoes carry all sorts of diseases. So there are many other discoveries going on in NASA's citizen science projects, and you can get involved. These projects are real collaborations between scientists and an interested public like you. I am sure some of you might be saying, well, I don't have a fancy degree, or I can't discover new planets beyond our solar system. And you'd be wrong. You don't have to have a special degree or job title. In fact, you don't even need to have experience. If you're curious about our universe and about our planet Earth, you can get involved with real NASA projects and work alongside real scientists right now. So what are you waiting for? Come on and join us. To get started, go to science.nasa.gov/citizenscience. See you there.
Great, and thank you to Jim. And I wanted to say that joining us live from NASA today is Citizen Science Officer, Marc Kuchner. And Marc, one of the things that I have been learning so much about over the past year, engaging directly with you through the Gulf of Maine Research Institute's partnership to support citizen science leaders, is NASA's commitment to scientific discovery through citizen science. And not that that's not a goal of all citizen science in some way, shape, or form, but NASA is particularly behind that. And I wanted to both welcome you here and give you a chance to say a few words about NASA and celebrating the science that is made possible through volunteer contributions.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. Well, that emphasis that we have at NASA, that realization that citizen science is not only real science, but excellent science, that is leading the way in multiple scientific fields. You know, I learned that was possible really from Chris Lintott, who's our special guest today. In Zooniverse, citizen scientists are, of course, included on publications, of course credited, of course expected to do cutting edge research. That is the ethos in Zooniverse. And when I first started, that came as a shock to me. My first impression was that citizen science was going to be some kind of that it would be a fun pastime, perhaps. But no, this is real. This is buckle up, hang on tight. It's a wild ride into the reality of science, the ups and downs, the roller coaster, the authenticity, it's real. And I learned that from indirectly and directly from Chris and the many projects that he's inspired over the years. There are more than 100 citizen science projects that are active on Zooniverse, typically at any one time. I'll ask Chris what the total is, the number of projects that have come through Zooniverse over the many years. But it's mind-boggling what an imprint his work has had on me and then on this field. So super excited to have him here today. And also we get to spend this time with some of my favorite citizen scientists. We've got Kristin and Sumit and Rebekah from Disk Detective and from Backyard Worlds. They're some of our rock stars. They each have their own interesting stories about how they got involved and what this passion is meant for them. Rebekah and Sumit are going on to pursue higher education in science, and it's connected to their citizen science work. So let's start the show.
Great. Well, let's turn to Chris first. Do you want to set the stage for us and tell us a little bit about, for those who may be new to this, tell us about the Zooniverse.
Sure. I thought I'd start. I don't want to give a talk. This is not that sort of gig, but I thought I'd tell 3 stories to start with. But before I do that, I want to say thank you to the people I've already seen on the chat and who are on this call who've contributed to Zooniverse projects, because as Marc said, the capacity, enthusiasm, and sheer joy that our citizen science community bring to each and every one of the several hundred projects is inspiring. And when we started, we didn't think it would work too. And it's the citizen scientists and their ability and capabilities that have enabled us to do this. But I think my story with citizen science goes quite a way back now to when I was a teenager growing up in a small town in the southwest of England. And I got interested in astronomy because a neighbor had a small backyard telescope. And I was desperate to have my own. I sold ice creams on the seafront for a couple of summers to be able to afford a small telescope. And having got it, I was determined to do science with it. What excited me about astronomy was looking at the night sky, but connecting that to the idea that we could ask questions like, are there planets around the stars that I was looking at? And so I was inspired to contribute, but I didn't really know what to do with a small telescope. I sketched Saturn and Jupiter and the storms and sent those sketches to the British Astronomical Association, which for more than 100 years has collected such things. I sat out with a tape recorder, speaking into the tape recorder every time a meteor flashed overhead to track annual storms like the Perseids and the Leonids, and sent those in too. And I realized now that I was doing citizen science, but I also found out at the time that There were people with more expensive equipment that seek digital imaging was taking over amateur astronomy, and real discoveries were still being made by volunteers, but I would have had to sell an awful lot more ice cream to be able to participate as that sort of citizen scientist, though you can still go and do meteor counting now, and that's still useful. So that was my early phase with citizen science, and it kicked off my journey to be a professional astronomer, because I realized I needed to go and get access to big telescopes. One of the things that you realize when you talk about citizen science is that this is not a new idea. And so my second story is about the place I'm in now. I'm a professor here in Oxford in the UK. And people in Oxford, it turns out, have been doing citizen science for more than 300 years. So I think the first successful citizen science project I could find was run by a guy called Edmund Halley, who lots of you probably know about because of Comet Halley, which is the most famous periodic comet. It's just about its furthest from the sun at the minute. Well, Halley was interested not just in comets, but in the movements of the solar system. And in 1715, the year 1715, he realized that there would be a total eclipse of the sun visible from England, and that timings of that eclipse would help him refine his model of distances to the moon and the sun. And so Halley did a very smart thing. He arranged to observe himself, but he published a map with his prediction of the eclipse on it. And you could buy the map, it cost 1 pence. And at the bottom of the map, there were instructions on how to send your timings to Edmund Halley. And about 400 people across the country sent in eclipse timings to Halley. And that was the data he used to refine his model. He did get data himself from London. In Oxford, it was cloudy, and in Cambridge, the other great university observatory here at the time, a whole crowd of well-wishers and supporters came out to watch the scientists make the measurements and distracted them. So they got no useful observations from Cambridge whatsoever, and Halley's project was saved by what we now think of as a crowd of citizen scientists. So one of the things that inspires me, and I think my colleagues in the Citizen Science Association as well, is that there is this great history where when you look at who's been driving science for hundreds of years, it's often not the people you expect. It is people we now call citizen scientists. My third story, I think, is a modern one. I think my favorite moment in the more than 10 years that we've been running these sort of projects, it's very hard to just pick one, but I remember being up at the Siding Spring Observatory in the heart of the Australian bush. It's an amazing place with the beautiful southern night sky overhead. I think there are street lights a few miles away, but the nearest town is 8 or 9 hours drive away. And I was sitting out under the stars talking on the phone to a citizen scientist called Andrew Gray in Darwin in Australia, who had helped us find 5 planets around a star studied by NASA's Kepler Space Telescope, the star K2138. And those planets turn out to be very special. We have telescopes looking at them now. We actually have a European satellite called Chaos looking at them. But it was that connection to somebody who had made the discovery that I think emphasized what Marc pointed out about Zooniverse. We want people to have fun in our projects. We want people to get something from them themselves, but it's also about making cutting edge discoveries. That story is slightly deceiving though, because it's very easy to talk about Andrew, and he had a great time on local television, and he made a great contribution. He was the person who showed us that those planets were in the Kepler data. But he was one of about 250,000 people who took part in that Planet Hunters project over the previous couple of days. And that discovery belongs not just to an individual citizen scientist, but to the enormous crowd of citizen scientists that we're able to gather via the web. The power of the Zooniverse and our sort of citizen science comes because of this crowd of people. So yes, Andrew was the one who saw the data from that star and recognized what he could see, but there were also hundreds of thousands of people who saw data from other stars and said, no, this isn't a planet. And if you think about science, the discovery that something isn't interesting is actually just as important as the discovery that it is. So we need the whole crowd so that we can find the unusual things. And I hope we'll talk more about that. I think we just heard from Jim Green talking about scientists having lots of aha moments. I think for lots of us, they can be a bit of a struggle. And if you, in my career, there've only been 1 or 2 moments where I felt like I've made a discovery, but thanks to the crowds that we've gathered and the citizen scientists who work with us, we really do have aha moments all the time. And I'm looking forward to talking to you all about some of mine, but also hearing from our citizen scientists about the discoveries they've made and the projects that they've been involved in. So hopefully that sets the framework, and I'll hand back over to you, Jennifer.
Great, Chris, thank you so much, and for just sharing some of what has brought you to this. I know, and others on this line might or might not know, that Zooniverse, this platform that you have helped create, it allows anyone to classify or transcribe or describe images that goes so much further than astronomy. And I think, as Marc said, there are hundreds of projects on the Zooniverse now, and opportunities for many more. I know today we're going to be talking about and hearing from two in particular that are NASA projects. And Marc, I'm going to give you a chance to specifically invite your volunteers to introduce themselves to make this connection to NASA science. But do you want to say anything right now about your relationship with the Zooniverse and the role of the Zooniverse in NASA?
Well, I'll say most of NASA's citizen science projects currently online are Zooniverse projects. And that's probably because Zooniverse provides us great tools for analyzing data, and NASA has a lot of data. So it fits very well. Zooniverse is a pleasure to browse. You know, you just they've given a lot of thought to the design of the spaces, how to teach people. You go on, and people talk about universal design for learning, and a lot of that concept is you create different modes of learning on the same project. You offer people different ways of entering a building. Just in architecture, you also offer people different ways of learning the science. The Zooniverse has had that baked in for decades now. There is a field guide, and there's also a tutorial, and there's also a about page, and there's also a blog, and there's also a video. Like it comes at you from, offers you a menu of ways to get involved in any given one project, and it makes it hard to say no to that opportunity to do science. So let's move on and talk to the citizen scientists and
Great, Marc. Well, tell us about the two projects and then introduce your volunteers, if you would.
Fantastic. So the two projects are Disk Detective and Backyard Worlds. And Disk Detective was my first foray into citizen science, started in 2014. It's on Zooniverse. And it searches for planetary systems, not by searching for the planets directly, but by searching for disks where planets form. The second project, Backyard Worlds, Planet 9, set out because my advisor in grad school back a long time ago, longer than I care to admit, was Mike Brown, who is one of the proponents of the Planet 9 hypothesis. We're simultaneously searching for new objects in the outskirts of the solar system. That's really hard. And also new objects that are near the sun, but not quite in the solar system, and those are brown dwarfs. And that has proven enormously fruitful, as you heard Adam say in his talk last year. We go over 3,000 of them. Let's see. Why don't I introduce now Sumit? I'd love to hear. Okay, Sumit works on Disk Detective, and he's got one of our discoveries in his background, which makes this really easy. Sumit, would you introduce yourself and maybe tell us what's in your background?
Thank you, Marc. Good morning and namaste. Namaste, because I am from India and I started working on Disk Detective some 7 months back, and the journey has been fantastic till date. The background that you see, the orange eclipse, the ellipsoid type of an object that you see is the planetary disk that we say that forms around the stars when the star just starts its functioning. And this is called a Peter Pan disk, which is one of the discoveries from the Disk Detective project back in 2016. I think it was the first time it was proposed. And the cool thing about this disk is it looks like these are the planetary disks which had a holy grail of youth and eternity, and they do not age at all. Usually the disks age and they form planets and asteroids and dwarf planets, moons, etc. These are the ones which do not age at all, and that's one of the objectives that's there in Disk Detective. So that's all from Disk Detective. Thank you, Marc, for having me here as a panelist. And back to you.
Sumit, will you tell us about your recent acceptance into degree program?
That is something that has been one of the greatest achievements in this year, 2021. And the best part about this was the acceptance letter was there in my email on the day of my birthday. So that was the best thing about it. And I would give it a majority of the credit to Disk Detective and the citizen science projects that I'm part of, the Backyard Worlds and the Gravity Spy. I got admitted in Liverpool John Moores University, UK, and I'll be starting my schooling in the month of September. It has been 6 long years since I was starting to get into a grad school for my master's in astrophysics, and somehow, because of my background and because of my undergrad, I was not able to get there. These projects helped me have an advantage over all the applications that I had there, and because of the experience that I had working with the projects, the interview was as smooth as butter, and I was selected just in a couple of days after application. So yeah, I'm grateful to you, Marc, grateful to Zooniverse. Thank you, Dr. Lintott, for creating this platform. This has changed my life, and I have seen many people change their lives as well. Thank you, and yeah, back to you, Marc.
I don't know what to say, Sumit. You're a superstar, and we knew you when.
Well, and Marc, I have learned from our other 2 volunteers that Sumit is not alone in going from citizen science participation into graduate school. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's true for our other 2 guests as well. Would you like to say a little bit more about Backyard Worlds and Rebekah and Kristin?
Okay, I'll talk a little bit about it if you guys want.
Please. Hi, Kristin.
Hello. I think the main thing that I would like to get across to everybody is how easy it was to start in Backyard Worlds. Backyard Worlds is a Zooniverse opportunity to look through data and try to find Planet 9, which is really exciting. But like Marc said, in doing so, we're also finding a lot of brown dwarfs and other celestial objects. So I just wanted to mention that when I first started this, I literally just got an email from NASA because I subscribed to their email newsletter, like most space nerds do. And in the email, it said, get involved, and you could click a link. So I clicked the link and it brought me to the Zooniverse. And by that evening, I was sifting through data from the Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer that evening. And so it was very easy. And I think that people need to know you don't have to have any background in it to start. That's what's so exciting about it. And then you can dive deeper if you want to, because there are all kinds of tutorials on there where you can learn more about different databases. And since then, I have actually submitted maybe 25 objects of interest that may be as yet undiscovered, but they're still being vetted because it takes a while to vet everything. But and long story short, I kind of had a midlife change of plans and decided I really loved space so much that I decided to go to graduate school. And so now I am at the John D. Odegaard School of Aeronautical Sciences from the University of North Dakota. And anyway, thank you.
I didn't even know that about you. That's amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you. Yeah, I love the opportunity to be able to look at things maybe no one has ever seen before. It's pretty exciting. And I think that the fact that you're bringing it to so many people, just the average person on their computer, is a huge opportunity for people. And you can, like I said, dive as deeply as you want to. I've learned several databases, celestial object databases, different analysis tools that I've used to try to identify things. And it's been really fun. So I really appreciate it.
Kristin, I'm really pleased. Sorry, if I could jump in. I'm really pleased to hear that you found it easy to get started. I think that's something we really try with our projects, because I think it's really important people can stumble across them. I want somebody not to have to make the big life-changing decision at the beginning. I want them to hit a website and count something, or learn what a debris disk is, or find out about Planet 9. So can I ask you, what did you, when you saw that website and you clicked on it, what did you think you were getting into? You presumably didn't click and think, "Oh, this will lead me to graduate school." Like what was it you expected from that email, from that site when you clicked through?
When I saw that I could search for Planet 9, I just thought, that's cool. That's just a cool thing. I'm going to search for Planet 9. And when I clicked on the link, the first thing that popped up was a very simple tutorial. And I think if you click it to this day, it still has that tutorial that pops up and shows you exactly what to look for. There's examples of what to look for. It's very simple. I mean, children can do it, classrooms can do it. And so I did the tutorial. It took me maybe 10 minutes to read through. And after that, I just literally started flipping through what they call the flip books of the data taken. And it was really kind of exciting for me to see those things and feel like I was contributing in some way. And so then I got way into it because it was so fun.
Woohoo.
Well, Chris, thanks for that question too. It's always good to know sort of what enables people to get started, not just maybe what the life-changing moment was, but just what gets people into this, because there can be so many pathways. Rebekah, do you want to share a little bit about your story and what got you started, or where you've gone with this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am similar to Sumit and Kristin in that I was, doing my own thing. I've been in banking for 10 years now. And I decided, law school was always where I thought I was going to go. And I was on my way there and I needed a science credit. And so I took an astronomy class actually for my science credit. I've always loved space, astronomy, learning all about the cosmos. And I ended up taking a class where the Zooniverse project was actually part of the curriculum. And so I did a class. I did a Zooniverse project. I picked Backyard Worlds and I fell in love with it. I, just like Kristin, I got obsessed with it really fast. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. And I remember for the project, you only had to do about 20 slides or flip books of data. And I just didn't stop. I just kept going. And I became more involved with Backyard Worlds a couple months later, and I decided, nope, this is what I love, and this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And now I'm attending the International Space University for my master's in space science. So I'm moving to France in 2 months, across the world for me in Canada, and I can't be more excited. And it's all thanks to Zooniverse and Backyard Worlds. So thanks, guys, really.
Namaste.
This is fantastic. And it was not our specific intention today to put together a panel of citizen scientists turned grad school students in astronomy, but it is a really great chance to see that citizen science can lead in so many directions, can be a stepping stone to other things or a pivot point in people's lives. And I know there's a session later on today where Marc will be talking with some other volunteers who have looked at things they could do beyond their citizen science participation as well. One of the reasons that we did bring this team together, though, is that each of you as volunteers have had these deep experiences with projects that are working with Marc as a researcher and Chris as the designer and visionary behind the Zooniverse platform. And we really wanted to give a chance for you to bring some of your questions in about what makes these projects work for you, how things got started, what questions you might have particularly for Chris to dig in a little bit deeper about the way these things work. And I know each of you have some questions. I've talked with each of you, and I'm hopeful that this can just become a conversation. But Sumit, I did want to you and give you a chance to go first, and then we'll see where this conversation takes us.
Thank you, Jennifer. Dr. Lintott, first of all, thank you very, very much for creating the Zooniverse platform. I owe my gratitude to you because if it was not for Zooniverse, I would have maybe not got into admission in this situation where we are all connected virtually. My question to you, Dr. Lintott, would be, what was the main motivation behind creating the platform like Zooniverse?
Desperation, I think, and a bit of confusion, because I think if we'd known, if I'd known how big this could be, I don't think I would have started. So I started with a simple problem, which is a scientific problem. My main job as a scientist is to understand how galaxies form and evolve. And to do that, you need to look at them. And astronomers had got very good at using large surveys to take many images of the sky, and we'd overwhelmed ourselves, and we couldn't sort through the images. And so I'd heard of a few other projects. There's a NASA project called Stardust at Home, which had people looking at dust grains brought back from a comet by the Stardust probe. And if you went to the Stardust at Home website, you saw these blurry images of dust grains, and you had to take an exam to participate in the project. And I kept failing the exam, but I'm interested in galaxies rather than dust. But so I had this thought. I'm told, I don't remember this, but the other members of the team who I was talking to tell me this was in the Royal Oak in Oxford, which is a pub just down the road. And we said, look, if people will look at dust grains, surely they will look at galaxies. And that was the thought that led to Galaxy Zoo. So it didn't really have a grand plan. It was just maybe we could get people to help us look at our galaxies. And then on the first day, we had about 70,000 classifications an hour. The platform broke. We had 15,000 emails from people saying, how else can we help? And so what was this nice little project that I thought might be fun became the thing I was going to do for my career. And so that was one project. So that was Galaxy Zoo. And then Zooniverse came about really because two things happened. One was we started to talk to other scientists who wanted help, who would say things like, your people who look at galaxies, do you think they'd help me count penguins or transcribe old weather notebooks or look at debris disks or so on? So we knew that there were other scientists who had the same problem as we did, but we also knew we didn't really understand why Galaxy Zoo was successful. We know a bit more now. We know that it's because of the enthusiasm and the desire of this large community of citizen scientists who all get to help a little bit, as well as those who want to go on and study, as the three of you have done. But we had no idea. So we thought, well, maybe if we create some more projects, we'll understand more about, it's very an astronomer way to study something. We'll just look for more examples. We thought maybe we'll make an easier project. We'll make a project that doesn't involve galaxies. We'll make a project that involves transcription of text. We'll make a project that involves sound. We'll make a project that's difficult. We made a project, one of my favorites is a project called Higgs Hunters, where the odds of success were millions to one, but the community would win a Nobel Prize if we found anything. So maybe would people take part in that project? And so Zooniverse started as a way to just try and work out what works and what doesn't. And we keep being surprised that actually, thanks to the amazing team that I work with here in Oxford and at the Adler Planetarium and University of Minnesota, like we found that we can build this variety of projects. But honestly, and if you're going to be have a career in science or as a citizen science, you have to realize that most of the time you might have an aha moment, but then you don't know what you're doing. And the importance is to just try and do something, which is pretty much how Zooniverse happened and has kept happening.
Hey, if we combine Planet 9 and Higgs Hunters, we can make it 2 million to 1.
Right, at least.
500,000 to 1, sorry.
Right, yeah. If you launch enough projects, you do find the really rare stuff.
Well, with the 2 million to 1, that's one of the benefits of having so many people involved, right?
Right, well, exactly. And I think that the Planet Hunters shows that really clearly. I keep boring the team with, I've got an email I sent the night before we launched the Planet Hunters project that made the discovery that I talked about, and many other discoveries of planets. And my email to the team is about the fact that I suddenly had this feeling that I didn't think it was going to work. That I thought this task of finding because you don't see the planets in pictures, you see the planets in data, you see the signature of the planet going in front of its star. And that's a task that, one might argue that computers can do and that machines could do, but it turned out to be something that our volunteers are very good at. And we find particular kinds of planet, unusual systems, planets in long period orbits. But I wrote this long email about why it was okay that we were launching this project that might fail, because we'd been honest with the citizen scientists that it might fail. And actually, it's been one of our greatest success.
Great. Well, I know there are so many other questions. Kristin or Rebekah, feel free to take it from here.
Sure, I can jump in with a question. I was, because of my experience with Zooniverse and bringing it to me through the classroom, I'm just wondering, do you believe that Zooniverse can have an impact in the classroom? And if so, is there an age group that you see benefiting the most educationally from citizen science, or everybody across the board could use it as a tool?
No, it's a great question. I was grinning. You probably didn't notice, but I was grinning as you told your story, because I just think that sort of injection of authentic science, but the experience to do something where the answer isn't known by the person teaching you is so important in inspiring people to do science or to have science in their lives, whether they go on to be scientists or not. So that it was always in the back of my mind. I think my experience playing around, my story about how I became a scientist is about playing around with a telescope. It's not about what I learned in the classroom, because that felt like a textbook to me. But your question about age groups is really interesting. We've done a lot with sort of Astro 101 and so on in the States, but we've got an interesting program here in Oxford where we're taking not astronomical projects yet, but some of our biology projects. There's one involving the structure of viruses that became very relevant to people in the last couple of years, and one involving diseases like TB. And we've taken those into classrooms with 12, 13 and 14-year-olds. And the reason we're talking to them is that there's quite a lot of research that people's attitudes to science often get set very young. So by the time you're talking to 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, they've kind of decided in many cases whether science is something that's going to be part of their lives or not. So if we can build projects that give you that buzz of wanting to see the next image, or that buzz of realizing your teacher doesn't know the answer, or that buzz of connecting to a scientist early on, I think that could be a really powerful thing. Not to say that, of course, citizen science isn't for everyone, but our first experiences of those projects are great. We did show off a bit, so it's nice when the kids who've been counting penguins suddenly find themselves on a phone call to a researcher who's standing on a glacier in Antarctica, thanking them for their work. But I think that sort of getting to people early is really, really important.
Great question.
Dr. Lintott, I was wondering, do you know how many people have been touched by this? Like how many citizen scientists? I mean, it's in the millions or hundreds of millions?
Yeah. So we have more than 2 million people have registered on Zooniverse, which is incredible. And lots of those will have come and experienced Zooniverse once, right? So they will have done a project for a little while and gone off. And I think that's great. They had a scientific experience that they can talk about and think about. So we know it's millions, but I like to think about, partly because it makes the number larger, but I like to believe that all of those 2 million people will have told at least one person about what they did. If you meet a friend, you say, "What did you do yesterday?" It's like, "Well, I found myself on this website trying to find Planet 9, or I'm really into justice, or I spent yesterday counting penguins, or here's an image I found from a 15th century manuscript," or whatever it is. So I think one of the things that's important to me as a science communicator is that I've spent my life trying to talk about science, and I used to do that by standing on a stage and telling you about cool things that I've done, and that's fun for me, and hopefully if I do my job it's fun for you, but it's for the people who are already interested. Whereas if we have 2 million people who in their everyday lives are encountering science and talking about it, then I think that's the real power of these projects. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but what do your friends make of of your citizen science? Is it something that you talk about, or is it just, you know, NASA nerd stuff that's not part of your life with them?
Yeah, I think they think it's really interesting because the first time I found something and I said, I asked in the comments on Zooniverse where I found an object of interest and somebody confirmed, yes, it is. Go ahead and submit the I think you got one form. I was so excited. I don't have a lot of Facebook friends, but I posted it on Facebook, and yeah, everybody was like, what? You know, that's crazy. You know, what do you mean you found an object of interest? You know, so yeah, I mean, I think it really, the word probably spreads pretty quickly because it's so unique. It's just such a different pastime.
Yeah, and that's so much better than hearing in a press release that the University of Oxford or even NASA have discovered something. Though both of those institutions are cool, I think that probably has, you know, that surprises people perhaps a little in a way that sort of scientist in lab you've heard of, probably wearing a white coat, makes discovery. And I think there's a real importance here about those things, and it's very hard for us as professional scientists to connect to communities. So I think citizen scientists, whether they encounter us in the classroom or as part of their own studies, or as somebody who stumbled into Zooniverse, play a really strong role there.
Well, you know, when I was talking with Kristin yesterday, Kristin, this point that Chris is making about discoveries was one that I also understood you had an interest in. Do you want to take us there in the conversation?
Sure. I was wondering, first of all, you've already mentioned some of the neat discoveries about planets and everything, but what would you say is the most surprising discovery? Maybe something somebody discovered that wasn't even the main purpose of the project, because I think it happens in backyard worlds. I think, you know, people are finding all kinds of interesting things.
Yeah, this is actually something I spend a lot of my time thinking about now, is that when you have, it shouldn't be a surprise, but when you have people looking at your data, they get distracted, and they get distracted by interesting and unusual things. So one of the important things from an astronomer's point of view in particular, but also in other fields like ecology, it is that thanks to our crowd of collaborators, our citizen scientists, we can still be surprised by data, even though we've got hundreds of thousands of images. I think the most ridiculous one is from the Gravity Spy project, which Sumit has participated in, mentioned earlier, where this is a project looking at highly technical data from gravitational wave observatories, these very sensitive instruments that try and detect ripples in space. And the project is another one that I didn't think would work. Involves looking at the noise, so the things that aren't the colliding black holes that we're looking for, but you need to understand the noise to operate the experiment. And volunteers sort through and classify this noise. And then if you find there's a new type of noise, then the people on site can work out what it is. And one of the types that the citizen scientists found turned out to be because there were ravens, birds, pecking at ice that builds up on the long arms of the detector. So that's definitely the weirdest and most surprising discovery. But I think in astronomy, I've talked about planets, but in my home project in Galaxy Zoo, I'm very taken with an early discovery, which were the green pea galaxies. So they were called this by the volunteers because they're small, round, and green, and that they look very distinctive. And they turn out to be really efficient factories of stars. So for some reason, these tiny galaxies are turning all their gas into stars right now. And we don't really understand what's going on. There have been a couple of hundred papers written about the peas, for people studying them with pretty much every telescope on the planet and trying to understand them. But they came from a bunch of volunteers who found them and then organized themselves to try and understand them. And they called themselves the Peas Corps. And they got together and they hunted for these things. And the first I knew about them was an email that said, we found a new type of galaxy, here are 200 of them, which was just an amazing moment. And that was the point where we realized how important this serendipitous discovery, this being surprised by the universe could be. Because finding a galaxy that looks like a penguin or an unusual shape or something, fine, that sort of makes sense. But finding a new class of galaxy that astronomers had missed, even though they've been in the data for 60 years, that really taught us that we should be humble about what we can do with the data and really listen to the citizen scientists when they tell us that there's something interesting there.
Marc, you've been burning to ask a question here. I know we've been
Yes, I have
chatting.
always have questions for Chris. Chris, you've written a bunch of books, including one with co-author Brian May, the guitarist from Queen.
That's true.
How did you come to be friends with Brian? And tell us about your most recent book, The Crowd in the Cosmos.
Well, this is the story of the Zooniverse. So I highly, it's just out in paperback in both the US and UK, and I happen to have a copy. So do have a look if you like the kind of stories about the peas and planets and all sorts of things, and the importance of serendipity. That's the book. But no, Brian's interesting because Brian, I guess people all over the world know the band Queen, but Brian has sort of become a citizen scientist. So he was a PhD astronomer when the band were getting going in the 1970s. And then he got kind of distracted. And so instead of writing up his thesis, he ended up traveling the world and playing music. And then 25 years later, actually 30 years later, he decided to come back and try and finish his degree. And so he got in touch with some astronomers, and I got to know him that way, helping him helping him understand how to use modern technology like the web to write an astronomical thesis. But he's continued his research. He studies, actually you'll be interested because he studies dust in the solar system. He looks at something called the zodiacal light, which is the leftover dust in our solar system. But he's carrying on with his research in his spare time. So I guess he's our most prominent citizen scientist. The link back to Zooniverse is that he posted early on about Galaxy Zoo. And so a large proportion of our early volunteers were Queen fans. So if anyone wants to study the musical taste of Zooniverse volunteers, then there's an implicit bias in the data because of how people found us early on. That support was excellent.
Crazy.
Yet another linkage between science and art, which is a theme that's been coming up on some of our sessions. There are these great connections, and yeah. Rebekah, can I turn to you to jump back in here with a question for Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been talking with Chris a lot about the successes and the benefits of Zooniverse, and I was kind of going to flip it around and ask, are there any obstacles that you've come across with Zooniverse and citizen science? And if so, what is Zooniverse doing to overcome those obstacles?
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of looking at it because I think we've learned how to do some things well. And so we have all these projects, and the projects produce science, and we have a lot of volunteers, which is great. But I think there are three things that worry me that I think I'd say we're working on. One is the kind of advanced work that I know I hope we'll get a chance to hear a bit about what you've been doing, but that Marc and his team with Backyard Worlds and Disk Detective are able to work closely with a smaller group of citizen scientists. I think we haven't found a good way to do that in the open with many thousands of people yet. So lots of the discoveries I've talked about come about from discussion on the Zooniverse's talk forums and so on, but trying to plug the professional scientists who are often junior and busy and stressed into those communities in a way that works for everyone is really difficult. And there are many issues there. Partly it's practical, like where should that talk happen? Partly it's, I think, we did a study of Galaxy Zoo at some point, and the best predictor of when a conversation on our talk forum would stop would be my participation in it. Because 2 or 3 of the volunteers would be having an excellent discussion about galaxies, and I come in and say, "Oh, that's really interesting. I think you're right here," and it's like the teacher coming into the room and shutting it down. So I think understanding how to properly combine professional and citizen scientists is really hard. So that's one. The second one I touched on is I'm really interested in how we keep finding the unusual stuff as we get to bigger and bigger data sets, and there are solutions, I think, involving machines, robots that do some of the work for us. And so working on how to, if you have a survey that produces, we're building a telescope called the Bira-Rubin Observatory that produces 30 terabytes of data a night. How you choose what you see there and still can be surprised is really hard. But the biggest problem, I think, is there are still people for who that front page of a Zooniverse project, even though it's one click to get started as a tutorial, that message that you can take part in science is really off-putting for people, particularly people who had a bad experience at school or have come to believe that science isn't for them. I think that sort of NASA wants you to help find planets is a wonderfully inspiring message, but for some people it's scary. and working out how we can help those people get started so that some of them will have a good time and participate for a bit and go on and tell their friends, but maybe some portion of those will become the next Kristin and Rebekah and Sumit. But I think there's still this question of how we really work very hard to reduce the initial barrier. So those are three things that we're talking about and which bother us. But the great thing is we've got a great bunch of projects and a great team, so we can keep experimenting and we will keep trying.
Oh, Kristin, do you want to jump in there?
I have a quick question. Is there anything you can tell us about any new projects that might be on the horizon, or is that all secretive?
We try not to be too secretive. It's mostly that we're sort of running pretty fast and stuff. We put stuff out when we get it. I think I'm very excited. I don't think I've announced this anyway, but we're going to try a new version of Galaxy Zoo, the oldest project. So in particular, we're going to try a really simple project that just shows you galaxies from a survey with the Japanese Subaru telescope. And we're going to just ask you which of these galaxies is most interesting. So this is a sort of, I think of this as a like relaxing, low stress Zooniverse project. It's a good sort of end of the week, just click through, see some nice images. And why we're doing that is that clever people like Mike Walmsley, who's at Manchester, who was my PhD student, just finished, and Kate Story-Fisher, who's at New York University, have come up with ways where machines can tell us which of those images are most unusual. But unusual is not the same as interesting, because most unusual things are boring. They're places where a satellite went across the image, or there's a bright star that floods the field, or the camera malfunctioned. So I think we need people to tell us what's interesting. And so I'm really excited to try this. So in the next couple of weeks, I built the project yesterday with new tools, sent it to the Galaxy Zoo team. And in the next couple of weeks, I think if you're a Galaxy Zoo volunteer, you get an email and we'll see if it works. And I'm excited because it's a new kind of project. Those are always fun. So we'll see if it works. If it doesn't, we'll have to find a different way to do it. But I like the idea of, is this interesting? It's sort of a very simple question that can have many answers. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Sumit.
I'm probably in trouble for announcing that. Never mind.
Doctor, on the same line, I would like to hear from you. Where do you see Zooniverse as a project and as a community by 2030?
Wow. It's an interesting question. So we're committed to running the Vera Rubin Observatory that I mentioned, which is going to be this big telescope in Chile, starts a 10-year survey, hopefully in the year 2023. So that will run to 2033. We've committed to running Zooniverse with them and for them. So Zooniverse will still exist. That's the first thing. I think that what will happen, at least in astronomy, is that the volume of data that we're going to get from things like Rubin, but also future space missions as well, is going up. And so I think even with a crowd of 20 million citizen scientists or something like that, we won't be able to look at it all. And so I think you will see this sort of human and robot collaboration that's really important now. And I want to make sure the Zooniverse of 2030, I think, will be showing you things that you think that you want to see. So not just things that are scientifically interesting, but hopefully that it knows that you're particularly interested in a particular scientific problem or something like that. So I think a smarter Zooniverse makes sense. I also think that the range of projects is continuing to expand. So we are talking about astronomy today because it's NASA, but NASA has great Earth observation capabilities. I think ecology from space and on the ground is going to be a big thing. So my guess is that the most popular projects will be looking at our own planet, possibly from satellites in space, and using that to do things like work out ecosystem health and so on. So we can all meet back on Zoom in the year 2030, and you can tell me that I'm wrong because I missed that we're all doing medical imaging or reading ancient manuscripts or whatever it is. But I think that's a solid guess at where we're going in the next 10 years.
Thank you all. I know we're going to be moving here in the last half hour into some other questions from our audience, but Chris, I did want to give you a chance to see if you had additional questions for our panelists. Again, one of the reasons that we were doing this series of events at the intersection between the Citizen Science Association, which connects project leaders, and CitSciCon, which is connecting volunteers, is to really dig into this question to help project leaders also learn from volunteers. So here's a great chance, at least for you, I would say also for Marc, to invite any thoughts that you have or questions that you have for these three volunteers.
So okay, I think I have a question. The setup is that I have a friend who has done some research who suggests that the moment where you realize that you're doing citizen science, and I've had this experience on some of the biology projects, comes quite late, because first of all, you're thinking about the website, and then you're wondering about what you're clicking. Then you're like, okay, and I'm now part of this community and I'm doing citizen science. So my question for all of you in turn, and maybe Rebekah, will start with you, is when did you have a moment during your participation in the project where you sort of looked around and went, wow, I'm actually really part of this now? And what was it that caused that feeling for you?
Absolutely. Yeah, there definitely was. I can still remember it now. So I was going through the Backyard Worlds flip book, and it looks like a lot of noise when you're really starting to look at it and kind of decipher what it is you're looking at, and page after page after page can become really tedious and look the same. And my aha moment was when something didn't look the same, and I went, oh, hang on a second, I need to look into this a little bit further. And so I put it on the Let's Talk page, and then I kept looking at it. I saved it, I screenshot it for myself, I kept going back, and I thought, no, this is weird. Somebody needs to know about this. And I sent it in. And when I submit the Think You Got One form that Kristin had mentioned earlier, I thought, okay, I've sent this to somebody somewhere. Maybe they'll look at it, maybe they won't. But I think that is something very weird. And then it really, really hit home when I got an email from Marc about, I think it was 3 months later or something. And somebody from NASA is emailing me and telling me that they think maybe, something interesting was on that form. And it really made me feel like I made a contribution. I did the right thing. I'll never forget that feeling. That it changed my life. And
I love sending those emails on our project.
Yeah, it was so exciting. I saved it. I showed my mom. I showed, everybody knew about it, right? So I really appreciated it.
Yeah. We have a web developer who worked with us for years who actually discovered a planet on Planet Hunters in his own time, because and sending the email to him and hearing him react across the office was a lot of fun. So okay, so that's yours. What about you, Kristin?
My story is very similar to Rebekah's because I had the same experience, but for me, it didn't feel really like science at all at first. When I was flipping through the things, it almost just seemed like maybe like a puzzle or something, you're trying to find an anomaly or something that looks different. And I also got very excited when I saw something that I thought looked different. And I did the exact same thing. I put it on the Let's Talk page, and someone said, yes, it's definitely interesting. Go ahead and submit it. And for me, that was kind of an aha moment, like, wow, what I'm doing might actually, mean something in the world of science or advanced science in some little small way. And that's a really exciting feeling. And so that was my story.
And it sounds like it was one of the community who said yes, you think, because one of the things we see is the community help each other, right? So
yes. Yeah, it was. And also I've noticed that a lot. Whenever I have a question, somebody else, and I'll ask it, somebody else will come in within 24 hours and answer that question, or say, oh, what makes you think this looks like a mover? Or, like they will kind of help guide me through it. And I've actually learned so much from the other community members. They've recommended different databases that I look at, which I've learned how to use. And I've just learned so much. It is a real community feeling.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and that comes from the community. That really is, I think, a citizen scientist-driven thing, that there's this desire to help. We have a moderator on Galaxy Zoo, Elizabeth B, who we had some researchers studying how people talk to each other on Talk, and they came in and they said there's a bug in the system. And we said, well, what's that? They said, well, apparently there's this volunteer who sent 14,000 messages to 12,000 different people last year. And we said, oh no, that's Els, because what she does was she would hang out on Talk, and whenever anyone new joined, she'd say, hey, great spot, yes, that is that, and trying to give people exactly the experience that you're talking about. And she's utterly crucial to Galaxy Zoo and completely invisible unless you actually look at how the community is working. What about you, Sumit? What was your citizen science moment?
There was two citizen science moments I remember in the last couple of months. The first one was the meeting invite in my email ID, and the ending of that was .mit.edu. So it was MIT, and CC was Marc Kuchner .nasa.gov. And the first reaction that I had, okay, is this a phishing email trying to rob me out of money or something, pretending to be someone from NASA or someone from MIT? So that was the thing. And I thought, okay, that's a call. What the worst can be there? I could simply block my cards. Let's see what happens when you join the call. And it turned out it was an actual science call where people were discussing. The first day was fantastic in the sense that I did not understand anything that was going on in the call. I was looking right and left, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning in India by that time. It was, I had to wake up. I had to set my alarm at 12:30 in the night so that I wake up by 1 o'clock and get ready to join the call. That was the first thing. And the second was when I do a lot of questions. That's the way I work, and Marc knows this. I think he knows this better because I send a lot of questions. I blank because I do not expect an answer to them, because in the past I have sent many questions to many professors and researchers. I never got a response. I sent an email, and 3 days later I had a response from Stephen, who is the principal investigator in this detective. And I saved that as a PDF, took the printout of it, and I hung there behind the wall, on the wall, saying, okay, this is where I received that answers nice. From an actual scientist. And yes, I am now doing science. So those were the two.
That's such a good story. And I think it's that sense of having something to talk about as well. There's such a difference between, because suddenly I think because of citizen science projects like this, everyone involved is on equal ground. And certainly this is true of many of the projects. I've learned that through the Citizen Science Association. What these projects do is they create something that is as much yours as Stephen or Marc's. And so it gives you something to talk about that is this shared ground. And so it's wonderful you got that response. And we'll give points to the team. Marc and his team are particularly dedicated at doing this. And it's really important that happens.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thanks for asking that question. I think that's such a great question that we don't often have a chance to get the insights into. Is what does create that moment of feeling like belonging in a project? And I will just quickly circle back to where I started this session before we turn to some questions from the audience, which is that NASA has a particular dedication to the science outcomes of citizen science. And I've known that since I started through Sarah. Sarah Kearns joining us here is going to bring in some audience questions. But something that Sarah, who works at the Gulf of Maine Research Institute and has been working with NASA, with Marc for the past year, has helped me see is that NASA also really excels at working very closely and in a very engaged way with volunteers. Certainly not all of them, because there are millions, but there are opportunities to connect directly with NASA scientists. And I think that is such an amazing commitment, both to the people and to the science, and I applaud that. And there are so many people on the line right now, both project leaders and practitioners, and there are so many ways to get involved, whether or not you go on to grad school as these volunteers are starting to, or you just take a moment and classify a galaxy. This is a great chance to be asking your questions. And Sarah at the Gulf of Maine Research Institute has been working over the past year to bridge these connections and these conversations for citizen science project leaders in NASA. Sarah, what do you see in the questions? Do you want to lead us in a new direction here?
No, I'm going to stay right in the direction that you're in. This is a fascinating conversation. But I do want to talk about those millions again for a minute. And there have been a bunch of questions in the Q&A about resources on Zooniverse for educators. Do you have to have an undergraduate degree in science? Chris, would you care to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. So let me take the two separately. So no, you
Yes.
absolutely do not need to have any kind of background in science to take part in a Zooniverse project. We test, thanks to actually our community tests for us new projects. And one of the most amazing things is that when we send a project out that scientists have worked on to create, the volunteers are not so say, I didn't understand that, I didn't understand that, I don't know what you mean here, this doesn't work, the community won't understand that. So our projects go through this testing. Yes, we look at them, but by the community. So we sort of guarantee that projects on the Zooniverse, A, you will be doing something useful if you take part. You know, the scientists will use the answers, but two, and that every contribution will matter. But two, that within a few minutes, maybe as much as 10 minutes for some of the more complex projects, you can go from never having thought about galaxies or ecology or cell biology or Shakespearean manuscripts or whatever it is to being able to do something useful. It's sort of the opposite of the model. I think lots of us have this idea that, you know, I was a kid with a telescope and then I took some classes in school and then I passed some exams and then I went to university and then I passed some exams and then I got a PhD and I passed an exam and then I got a job as an astronomer. And at some point in there, I became a scientist. But I think mostly people think that happens towards the end. Actually, that's not true. The moment you ask a question, the moment you click on the project, you are a citizen scientist and you have something to contribute. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that millions of people who only have a few spare minutes because people are busy, and I know people don't necessarily need life-changing hobbies, they really can make a difference. In terms of educators on the Zooniverse, people I saw on the chat, there were people using them in classrooms and so on. You can go to, if you go to our education page, which is linked from zooniverse.org, we have some classroom resources, we have some suggestions, we have some tools for people who want to go deep with their class and start to look at how the process works as well. Or educators who are interested can just email us, contact@zooniverse.org, and we will do our best to sort you out.
And a follow-up question on that of my own, because I have worked in science education with citizen science and middle school students in particular. And what you were all talking about that moment when you realize you're doing something that's real versus homework is so important. Have your education team members figured out how to help students feel and know that they're contributing to something real? And how do you help set that stage for educators and learners?
So I think there are two important things that we want those encountering Zooniverse in a classroom, whether it's a university classroom or a middle school one, to know. One, and the most important one probably, is that your teacher doesn't know the right answers. And that requires supporting the teachers in many cases, because that's not a comfortable thing. It's not easy for me to stand in front of the audience and say, I don't know what this galaxy is. It's not easy if you're a middle school teacher to say, look, I don't know, but let's talk about it. But that's really important. And then the second thing is to know that the scientists are present. So we often bring videos or live calls or contact with scientists into those conversations, so that there's a person who's listening to your data as well. I'd like to be able to do those things for anyone using the Zooniverse, and to make sure that the scientists are present. But I think those are the key things, because if you can see that you're on an equal footing with the people you normally learn from, and that there's somebody who's there who's interested in what you're saying, then I think that's the magic in the classroom, at least.
I'd agree. So you've mentioned a few times some of the enormous variety of projects on the Zooniverse, and someone was asking about how did that come to be that you're hosting projects that aren't just about astronomy, and why does that trend continue? And how do you find the project that you want to participate in is another related question.
Yeah, those are good questions. So in terms of finding a project for you, I recommend just dipping in. So I don't try and make a choice. I genuinely start most days by clicking randomly on a Zooniverse project and then spending a few minutes on it. I spent Friday classifying woodpeckers, which is excellent and a really good start to the day. I know that there are more kinds of wood. I thought there was just one, but it turns out there are lots of kinds of woodpecker. It turns out. But anyway, so I think don't worry too much about the choice. Click, and then don't be afraid to move. I think browse. We got there partly because I am easily distracted, and it's been the privilege of a lifetime to spend my time having a call with somebody looking for supernovae, followed by a call from somebody studying lions in the Serengeti, followed by somebody who's interested in cell biology. So I'm somebody who's naturally interested in everything. And I think it's slightly, our team are similar. So I think we're partly distracted. But I think also, we often talk about the types of science. There's a physicist, a chemist, an astronomer, a planetary scientist, and somebody who studies Earth, a geologist or whatever. Actually, science is a method. It's a way of, or a set of methods. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of asking questions about the world and trying to get them answered. And so it doesn't feel weird to me that we have this platform which has a common method, a way of asking questions about data. It's not weird to me that some days we're doing that with particle physics and sometimes we're doing that with physiology. So I actually think it makes sense, but it is quite surprising because so much of what you hear about science is labeled with these domains rather than just a sort of let's experiment and ask questions scientifically.
I've also heard some of your colleagues, Cliff Johnson comes to mind, talk about the value of having history-based projects or transcription projects. It seems to be a good mechanism or strategy for increasing and broadening participation and bringing different kinds of people who might not have been known they were interested in astronomy, for example, but they got into Zooniverse and started doing one and then moved over to an astronomy project and discovered a whole new passion.
Yes, although I get told off by Sam Blicken, our humanities lead, if I push that, because it goes the other way as well. There are astronomers who find themselves. But I think that's right. We sort of got there by accident. Almost the first, I think it was the third or fourth project we ran was a project called Old Weather, which was transcribing climate records. And these are ship's logs from, originally it was the First World War, from the British Navy, and every 4 hours the ships recorded the temperature, pressure, wind speed and direction. And climate scientists need that historical data to test their climate models. But it turns out there was all sorts of other stuff written in the ship's logs. There was HMS Mantua lost 2 tons of chocolate overboard, which the community were very upset to hear. There were people who appeared, and people were able to piece together the stories, the history of what was happening. And so by the end of that project, that was a history project where the 2 people running it thought it was a climate project and everyone else involved thought it was a history project. And there is this rich joy. It has challenged us because we want to make sure that people, I said earlier that we want to promise to people that their contribution is useful, but that means something different when you're engaging with a museum archive than it does when you're looking at a survey for Marc and looking at this. Because from an astronomy point of view, you engage with Marc's project, what I mean is he's going to write a paper about that or follow up on a discovery. If we all go through the archives of the Tate galleries and look at their artist notebook collection, what we're probably doing is creating data that can go back into the archives for future researchers. So by working with humanities projects, A, it's great fun, but B, we sort of get a proper perspective on what we're doing, and it's really interesting. It's amazing how often the things cross over as well.
I just chime in for a second. That's a great example of why you need humans, why you need the citizen scientists. How the scientists think it's this kind of project, but it turns out that when you put all these other brains on it, it's a different kind of project. And I think half of our NASA discoveries through citizen science are those kind of pivots, where people took images of the sun and people started finding, and citizen scientists started finding comets in them, right? Or backyard worlds we think we're doing for brown dwarfs, and then someone calls us up and has been using the website to search for white dwarfs, right? So it's humans are magic. They do things that no no computer can dream of.
Humans, people, I try not, when I talk to computer scientists, I keep thinking about humans, but people, let's go with people. I think that's better. Otherwise I sound like an alien, but people are distractible, and they're distractible in the best way. And I think, you know, in particular, citizen scientists, I think, have a license to be distracted in a way that sometimes professional scientists find very difficult. If I set a PhD student the task of classifying 50,000 galaxies, it's quite hard for them to be in a space where they can stop and get distracted by the unusual thing that they found. Whereas hopefully everyone participating in our projects is already in the place where they're happy to be distracted. Actually, in the humanities, people talk about close reading, paying very close attention to every word or concept in a text. I think what we're doing is close reading across large data sets in the sciences, where we're paying individual attention to each and every galaxy on its own terms, rather than just putting it as a point in a database.
Sarah, do you mind if I interject here with a question for Sumit and Rebekah and Kristin?
Carry away.
Well, you know, because there are so many projects, and also because people can participate in so many different ways, right? And in the Citizen Science Association community, we have researchers who look at things like, how do people choose to participate? And there's no right way to do it. I'm curious from the three of you, we've talked a little bit about people who dabble, who try different projects because they just like the activity of doing projects and maybe helping to find something. Have you found yourselves dabbling in other projects, or are you more of a deep diver where you found your project in your home and this is where you're focusing?
I'm more of a deep diver. I just really became interested in backyard worlds after I started doing it, and by far that's where I've dabbled the most, in backyard worlds. I've looked at a few others, but I haven't gotten as deeply into them.
Rebekah?
Yeah, I have dabbled in some of the other ones, and I feel so terrible. I can't remember the name of it. It's chimp. It's the one where you're looking for the chimps and
chimpanzee.
Yes, thank you. So that one, actually, I love doing that one with my stepkids. They have a blast looking through these images of the jungle and trying to find the monkeys. And, you know, they just, it's really fun. We do it for family time. And I also did Planet Hunters as well. But Backyard Worlds is definitely where I've been focused the most.
Sumit, you mentioned a few projects already.
So in my case, it was very straightforward because I always wanted to have some credentials on my resume which would make my entry to a graduate school easier. So I knew I had to do astronomy. I was not sure which project was the best one. I started with Stardust at home in 2018. And then I was a part of Galaxy Zoo for some time. Never knew Galaxy Zoo was under Dr. Lintott. Thank you for having me here. So Galaxy Zoo was one of them. And after that, I started working on Super WASP variable stars, which was again an excellent way to engage with astronomers all over the world. And then finally, it was this detective, which was sort of boring to me because the flip books are not that interesting as it is for the other projects. The thing that came in later was the mail from Hugo, and that is exactly where I knew, okay, the flipbook might look like boring thing that I'm doing, but it's having an impact. And the very discovery of Peter Pan, because that is something I never heard before in whatever courses or books I've read on astronomy. That is something that that made me interested, because if something new has come out of the research, something substantial has to go in. That's exactly where my pivot point was. And I started, yes, this detective is my new home. And yes, I dedicate my time there.
So I love that this gives everybody a chance to find the way, not necessarily just their project, but the way or ways that you might want to get involved, whether it is both and or just one. Thanks for sharing,
yeah.
Sarah.
And also, I just want to say there are people who make art using the things they find in the project. There are people who write poetry about what they find in their project. There are people who are community driven. I mentioned Els earlier. There are people who give us tech support. We have translators, people who contribute by translating. So I think you're right Jennifer, like there's a citizen science story for everyone, I think. And it is about finding the right project. It's also about finding what you want out of that little bit of time that you're giving that you can get back.
This is all such a wonderful example, too, of how citizen science projects do invite the humans involved in science to show up and value the humanity. And one of the things that I've always loved about Zooniverse, it's kind of funny. It has its own little humor. The projects are named something. So I saw your post there, Chris, that you wanted to name the Chimpanzee Project Chimstagram. There's just this sense of humor that comes through and a warmth and humanity that is very welcoming. I think that's very important. Speaking of accessibility, somebody did ask in the chat about accessibility on the Zooniverse platform. And I think may even have some suggestions for making Zooniverse more accessible to different kinds of people with different abilities. Do you want to speak to any work that Zooniverse is doing in that regard?
I think we've done a little bit. We know we're not as good as we should be at it, and I will happily look at those suggestions for sure and pass them on. I think one thing I hope we'll do in the next year is go back to building sound projects. And I think when we do that, I think that will open up a space for a group of people who haven't been able to participate because our projects have been mostly visual. And I think that's a good opportunity to think about these things.
There's another question about what's the age of the people who are participating in Zooniverse, and are there projects that are appropriate for kindergarten age contributors? Yeah,
so actually one of the big surprises from studying the Zooniverse community is that we have people of all ages. But it does change a bit depending on which project. The most popular with kindergarten age by miles is Penguin Watch. So I recommend if you could sit on the sofa with your kids or family with a tablet or a laptop and just click on penguins. The images are charming. Everyone loves penguins. Penguin Watch is I think the way to go, and it's a great project. We do tell researchers that. And this is true, that it doesn't matter how beautiful or otherwise your data or images are, that doesn't predict how pretty people find the images, doesn't predict how likely they are to take part in the project unless there are penguins in them, in which case your project is much more popular. So all projects should probably add penguins, but at the minute, Penguin Watch is the way to go.
The power of the penguin. So there are more people who are asking, how do I pick a project that would engage my students in Columbia? Where should I start? And I think your advice, well, I'll jump in on this one. I think giving kids a chance to pick the project that they're going to participate in is incredibly engaging to young people. And it sounds like there's not a project that you could do that would really take you in the wrong direction. So mixing that up. But do you have comments on that too?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think there are definitely one thing to consider is as we get more global with our ecological projects, I think thinking about maybe projects about environments that the classroom can connect to. So there's this sense of place, particularly from some of the camera projects that's effective. But I think dig in. I think if you are using it in the classroom, it's worth checking how much data there is. So some of our projects don't exist for very long. And you can, again, email us, or there's a link on the education site, which will give you some suggestions as to long-lived projects. So if you're looking to do something not just tomorrow, but over a period of time, that's worth checking out. Otherwise, if the project's successful, it will still be there, but you lose this sense of doing something real.
Right. So someone else asked, what has been the most popular project on Zooniverse?
It's a really tight race between Planet Hunters and Penguin Watch.
There you go.
And I think Planet Hunters is winning right now, just in terms of number of classifications.
That is wonderful. And then we have a question from Marco, who I think you may know, concerning the Interesting Galaxy project that you mentioned. Do you think it would be ethical to use those data to construct or train digital doubles of specific individuals to search through large databases? I'm not sure I even understand that question.
So I think I know so the idea here would be so I talked a bit about having machines that can classify and the crowd that can classify, and we found that using a combination of those things does better than the machine on its own or the person on its own. But we could go further, and we could build a machine copy of Marc or a machine copy of Sumit and the other citizen scientists, which would classify in the same way. We've actually found that what we want to do is have machines that behave differently from people, because otherwise you throw away information. And so we're going in very much the opposite direction, where you let the machines be machines. They look at ideally the boring stuff or the stuff that's everyday, and then we'll have our citizen scientists behave differently from the machine and explore and be creative in the ways that we're talking about. So I think there's lots of interesting questions about how to combine machine learning and classification in these projects. But I think the answer is not to bring them closer together, but to preserve the unique abilities of both machine learning and the citizen scientists.
Well, this conversation has been an incredible example, a wonderful illustration of the value of the human beings in these projects. And it wouldn't be the same if we replaced it all with computers at all. And I love that. I love that way that you've described it there. There's value in computers and there's value in humanity, and let's keep them separate, right, doing the thing they do best. So Marc, did you have a comment to make?
Oh, I was saying, or keep them together.
Right, in the mix, right, complementing closely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's one very simple last question. Somebody wants to know if your book, Chris, is available in India.
It is. There isn't a local edition, but you can get hold, because it's an Oxford University Press, so you can get hold of it there. Or the book talk that I give is on YouTube, so you might want to start there if you're having trouble getting hold of the paper copy.
Excellent. And I think we're just about out of time. Jennifer, do you want the last word here?
We are. I think Tara is going to turn it over to me here. Just before we get to this last slide, which is what's coming up next, thank you so much again to all of our panelists for joining us, Dr. Chris Lintott, Kristin Grant, Rebekah Russwurm, Sumit Banerjee, of course, Marc Kuchner and Sarah as well, really for highlighting that these are contributions that depend on all of us and our insights and the way that we bring those together to make science possible. And I will reinforce, whether or not you are going on to grad school or just want a fun afternoon online, congratulations to these volunteers who are going on to grad school. For those of you who want to dive in any depth, there are some upcoming events. Next is how to find NASA projects near you. There's also Saving the World through citizen science, how to go deeper past your citizen science, as some of these volunteers have already illustrated, and then some telescope time tonight. So join in. There's a link there for how you can RSVP. Thank you again so much to all of you who joined us, especially our panelists. It's great to have you all here and for sharing your thoughts. Thanks, everybody.
Wonderful.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Really
Thank you very much.
And Rebekah, Sumit. Thank you, Chris.